September 9th of 2010 is when Animal Jam first launched, which is 15 years ago today. Despite this, development for the game started way earlier than you would expect. Given off the information we have, we can safely say around 2008-2009 was when the early concept of Animal Jam started to form. What you see on screen was the early concept of the game's avatars and art style being discovered. Some of these having kind of more of a mature look to them and some of them having a more infant look to them, while Animal Jam was kind of trying to find what the age range they really wanted to target for the game. In fact, one of the ideas and concepts Animal Jam theorized was Snoopy being the main avatar of the game and the whole game being based around him. This was because Smart Bomb Interactive, the company behind Animal Jam, had the licensing and game rights to Snoopy's video games. Matter of fact, before Animal Jam even made Animal Jam, they were making other games for other IPs like Snoopy and Pac-Man, for example. However, it was later settled with the animal look we have now in about probably late 2009, early 2010, where we would see these development screenshots, which would be used to advertise the game in 2010. These screenshots would be our first official look of the game, from what I can tell, and it's pretty safe to say this given that there are multiple items in the screenshots that variants do not exist in the actual game and were deleted when the actual game would be opened up to the open public anyway. Come 2010, Animal Jam finally had its open beta test in the summer of that year. You can safely assume they had some kind of closed beta test or friends and family beta test earlier in the year, but come summer is when the open beta test was first started and allowed players of the general public to actually play the game and see what Animal Jam was all about for a few months. Until September 9th of 2010 was when Animal Jam first launched as an actual game. This would have pretty big changes compared to the beta, obviously most notably being the club membership features being added into the game, some items being made members only, as well as some animals being made member only, but Animal Jam wouldn't see too many new things be added to the game outside of items until the following year. However, something notable I will say is the very first Night of the Phantoms and Jamalidays celebrations were introduced to the game, which were just Halloween and Christmas, obviously. Now, 2011 introduced a lot of big changes to Animal Jam and was probably one of the most content-filled years of the game. The first change off the bat was the login screen getting a total revamp alongside a new logo for the game. This logo actually being the logo we still use nowadays. So this logo right here is probably older than some of you watching this video. The first new animal since the beta was introduced, this being the seals. This would be the start of many new animals to be introduced to the game, like elephants, rhinos, crocodiles, sharks, dolphins, and sea turtles, all following throughout the year. I'm not going to mention every single new animal throughout the years of the game, and I'll probably mention it just as a general thing going forward. But the very first new land since the beta also being added was Mount Shavir, with Apondale following later in the year as well. These being the first two lands since the beta being introduced into the game. The next big thing to come to the game was also trading. This allowed players to trade items with each other and also gave opportunity to players that missed out on some items that came out in the year prior that were no longer in stores. This was a pretty heavily requested thing, especially with items that went out of season. Monthly member gifts were also introduced. This gave more benefits to club members. This gave them items, den items, even new dens as a monthly member gift, hence the name. Pets were also introduced into the game. This just being a literal pet that would go beside your animal. The first four being the pet dog, cat, frog, and duck introduced at the same time. The ability to change den item colors was also added to the game, meaning Animal Jam went back on every den item and made more colors for them. Thought that was pretty cool of them to do, to be honest. But just in general, more items were added to the game, as well as just new buildings and shops like the Flag Shop and Epic Wonders, for example, which would be pretty big staples into the game nowadays, I would say. And lastly, Animal Jam celebrated its first birthday, which is a pretty monumental thing as well. And as part of the first birthday celebrations of the game, they brought out ocean areas as part of the celebration, which they really went to great efforts to try and make the ocean areas of the game work, especially with the amount of ocean animals they added throughout 2011. Despite how unpopular it is now, it's kind of sad. I still love the ocean areas though. Now 2012, they started the year strong, adding horses as a new playable animal alongside 2 new parties, the trading party and restaurant party, these 2 being the start of many parties to be added to the game. Alongside, the Soul Arcade was introduced with a lot of new mini games for people to play. Mini games being a pretty big thing on the game at the time because there wasn't too much to do outside of those. This was probably the biggest update of the year though. The first leap year party was also held on Animal Jam in 2012. Thought that was mentionable because, you know, leap years only happen every 4 years, and a lot of people are nostalgic for the first leap year party on this game because of how good it was. Crystal Sands would also have a total redesign. From what I know, it was the only land to ever have such a big redesign and revamp to its artwork. I'm not too sure why it was only Crystal Sands, but surprisingly, a lot of people didn't like it at first, but now it's just kind of normal. Another big thing that was added in 2012 was the rare tag. This was added to select items Animal Jam considered to be rare. It usually signifies the item isn't returning to stores, but I mean, they didn't actually follow through with that criteria for the tag, unfortunately. However, this would also open the door for Rare Item Mondays. This would be a weekly event which Animal Jam would recolor an item and put it in stores as a one-day only thing to try create more rares in the game, which did actually work. The Summer Carnival was also introduced as another seasonal event on the game. This introduced tickets as a new currency to the game and introduced a lot of new mini games as well. Lastly, the News Crew was introduced, tied into Animal Jam's Daily Explorer blog. This was the first community program for players on the game. It also gave users that were in the News Crew this little name badge, which was also pretty cool. Kind of wish that they would bring this back. But other than that, just new items, animals, pets, parties, and dens would also be added to the game throughout the year. In 2013, I would call this the most controversial year for Animal Jam anyway. A lot of controversial updates met with greatly negative feedback at the time anyway. But to start us off, Animal Jam introduced Diamonds and the Diamond Shop into the game, which was a replacement for monthly member gifts. Alongside the Diamond Shop, they introduced a lot of previous monthly member gift items into the shop, allowing people to purchase them if they missed out on them previously. A lot of people didn't like this at first because a lot of these items gained value over the past 3 years of the game, so there was a very mixed response to this at first. Later in the year though, Animal Jam would introduce the adventure mode on the game. I guess this would be a story mode of the game because they kind of created lore around alphas and stuff on the game, which also alphas were kind of reintroduced because they were kind of forgotten about in the past few years of the game, unfortunately. But with adventures, it was also kind of a mixed feedback at first because of the prize pools for some of the hard mode adventures, which had clothing betas like worn blankets and fox hats in them, which were at the time pretty rare items. But more on a positive note, the very first Animal Jam themed plushie line would come to stores with the Sidekick plushies, which would give players promo codes to be redeemed in game upon purchase. I remember so many people buying these just to get them in game, which is kind of dumb. I am a proud owner of every Sidekicks plushie though. Thought I would mention that, as I will mention that at every opportunity I can. And also, for the first time in 2 years, a new land would be introduced into the game, this being Kimbara Outback, which at first was also kind of hated because it changed the entire map design, which I think was one of the very few times Animal Jam actually listened to feedback on the game because they changed it back to the normal map design within a few days. I thought that was pretty funny. Other than that though, typical new items, new animals, pets, parties, and dens would also be added to the game. Now, in the following year of 2014, I would say this is also a pretty controversial year as well, for a variety of reasons. It did start out strong with the very first flying animal in the game, the eagles, being added into the game. This was pretty big at the time, allowed players to fly over areas in the game they wouldn't usually be able to go without the use of glitches, for example. But to follow with flying animals, the very first flying and only flying animal adventure, the Forgotten Desert, was added to the game. This was met with great dismay because of the prize pool of the adventure at the time, bringing back items that were regarded some of the rarest items in the game. I'm talking like gazelle horns, beards, mech angel helmets, tiki masks, headdresses, and founders hats, to name a few, alongside many of the rarest den items in the game. A lot of people just hated this. It kind of ruined the rarity system at first. A lot of people confused on how the future of the game was going to be at the time, myself included. I'm not gonna lie to you. Not to mention, a lot of unreleased items were also also in the prize pool, alongside people tricking Animal Jam themselves into getting rares and other unreleased items in the game. So the economy of the game was kind of at a very, very weird standpoint, to say the least. But in brighter news, near the end of 2014, Animal Jam announced the very first 3D Animal Jam game, that being Animal Jam Play Wild. It launched in a closed beta state where people could apply, try it out, test it out. This was the first second entry, I guess, mainline Animal Jam game, other than the other spin-offs of the game like Tunnel Town, Jump, that came in previous years of the game. In 2015, there wasn't too much going on in the game. Obviously, there was the typical new animal, new den, new items, all that kind of stuff. But the pretty big thing at first was the introduction of the jammer wall. This was a pretty big feature at the time. It introduced as another option for socialization on the game. Unfortunately, all these years later, it's not too great. It's kind of stayed the stagnant state it has been over the last few years. But near the end of the year, more midway through the year, Animal Jam Play Wild would officially launch after it exited its open beta phase a few months prior. It's probably the last I'll touch on of Animal Jam Play Wild, because this is mainly about Animal Jam Classic, so to speak. But I think Animal Jam Play Wild was definitely a crucial part of Animal Jam's growth over the years, for sure. Then in 2016, the introduction of mainline promos on the game with the Adopt a Pet series and other toys made in collaboration with Jazzware Toys were introduced. This opened up a realm of possibilities for items to be made in the game. Obviously, a lot of promo codes, just a big collectathon from what I can remember for a lot of these. But a lot of items, a lot of pets, rare pets were introduced into the game this way, being extremely sought after. It was just an instant success at the start, and kind of set the precedent for years to come for promos regarding Animal Jam. Masterpieces were also added to the game. This allowed people to turn and export artwork they made in-game into actual den items to display and trade around. This was also a pretty big thing a lot of people requested for many years on the game, because the art studio in the game was just kind of pointless beforehand. And lastly, the Jambassador program was finally introduced into the game. A lot of people kind of wanted something by Animal Jam for the group of YouTubers back then, but it would invite a lot of popular creators like YouTubers and Instagrammers, as well as artists, to be featured in the program and to be used in Animal Jam content featured by Animal Jam themselves. Other than that, you know, the typical new animals, new dens, new pets, new items, etc., would be introduced throughout the year of 2016. Then when 2017 came around, it started off with a pretty big change to the game. The daily spin was changed for members only, which would allow people to only receive diamonds and gifts in the daily spin if they were a member. I don't think Animal Jam really realized entirely what this would mean for the game, but I think it entirely tipped over the diamond economy in the game for a large while. You know, it was pretty easy to buy things in the diamond shop then going forward, because you were getting 3 diamonds a day, whereas before it was you were getting a diamond once every week. Well, moving it back over to merchandise, the Animal Jam box subscription was launched as well, which usually would contain a bunch of Animal Jam themed accessories alongside promotional codes for items in game, kind of relating back to the boxes. A lot of these were some of, if not the best items in the game, regarded by a lot of people, and a lot of the codes came with some pets as well that people regard as some of the best in the game as well. So it was received pretty greatly. And then last thing in 2017 that's notable was the Animal Jam desktop app was made. So the way we all play Animal Jam nowadays, this was when this was launched for the first time, all the way back in 2017. This was made in preparation for when Flash shut down. It was still a few years until we would see that, but Animal Jam was definitely preparing for it years prior with the launch of this app. Now, some stuff happened in 2018, but there's only really 2 notable things. While Animal Jam continued to add new animals, pets, den items, promos, adventures, and more, the first big thing that happened in 2018 was Belush being added to the game. This was the first land in many years, and most people thought Animal Jam would never add a land in the game again. And you know what? It's kind of looking like that way nowadays, to be honest, because here we are almost 8 years later. We still haven't got a new land in the game. But from what I remember, this was just really underwhelming on delivery to me personally. It seemed like they had a lot of big plans for this and it just kind of fell through near the end. But speaking of falling through, WildWorks, previously known as Smart Bomb Interactive, I don't think I explained that previously, but Animal Jam was always in partnership with Nat Geo Kids behind National Geographics. The partnership they had going on for the entirety of Animal Jam was cancelled in 2018, or at least discontinued. And that means WildWorks would no longer be working with Nat Geo and incorporating like educational stuff into the game. I'm not too sure if they ever received funding from Nat Geo Kids for the actual game itself, or if it was just licensing agreements type of thing. But either way, all kind of branding of National Geographic was kind of stripped from Animal Jam, and there's like no mention of it anymore now because of that discontinuation of the partnership. And also in 2018, we would see the discontinuation of promos tied to Jazzwares. So stuff like the Adopt-a-Pet toys and the figurines and like that stuff would also be cancelled and would stop production while Animal Jam kind of reassessed what the future of Animal Jam merchandise was going to be. Then in 2019, Animal Jam did it once again. They listened to the player base on what they wanted. They finally added My Shops, which were a storefront hosted by a player that would allow them to sell their items for gems and diamonds and allow other players to buy them. It was like an alternative version of trading. When this was added, it was kind of mixed feedback at first. People were kind of skeptical on how items were going to be sold and what the prices of these items were going to be sold at. And it took a good few years before the, I guess, market kind of stabilized in diamond worth for items as diamonds became another mainstream measurement in Animal Jam rares, which is kind of funny to say. But this year would also be the year that Animal Jam would still be adding new animals, items, pets, etc., but there will be a noticeable gap in a lot of these things. Like Animal Jam started to slow down with the content release, and it would be actually the last year we would see a new animal being introduced into the game, which was the moose, which was a fantastic way to go out on that note. Animal Jam, yeah, I'm sure they're really happy that that was the last animal. Then in 2020, this was kind of the year a lot of people thought Animal Jam was done for. Animal Jam went under a name change, and it was switched from Animal Jam to Animal Jam Classic, with Animal Jam Play Wild, the 3D mobile counterpart, adopting the Animal Jam name and becoming HHQ's forefront of the brand overall and their main focus. So Animal Jam Mobile would be getting all the updates and Animal Jam Classic would be put on the back burner. And this was met with major controversy to the player base for obvious reasons. You know, everybody's known Animal Jam as just Animal Jam, and now it's called Animal Jam Classic, and it took a long while to kind of adapt to that change, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I still call Animal Jam Mobile Animal Jam Play Wild all the time, and I mean, Animal Jam's just always gonna be Animal Jam to me. But with noticing how slow the updates were kind of getting in 2019, it was made apparent that Animal Jam was indeed like slowing down the updates and not going to be adding new content in 2020 and therefore for Animal Jam Classic, it seemed like. And while they did say they're not going to shut down Animal Jam Classic or take it offline or anything like that, they would say they would uphold the game still, but only release, you know, recolored items and stuff like that. But nothing brand new was added to the game. I think throughout 2020, the last big new feature in the game was the eco credit feature. This allowed people to generate eco credits with items in their den. It was kind of a new currency. Not a whole lot of people were excited about it, but I mean, I thought it was cool. And I think rainbow raccoons were also added. This was like the last patterned animal in the game. So technically not the last animal, but last special animal, I guess. I don't know. But in late 2020, Animal Jam did actually suffer the biggest hack experienced yet, with their database being breached and leaked out to public, which caused a lot more ruckus on the game, caused a lot more hacks to happen on the game, and it still kind of affects the game even all these years later, unfortunately. A lot of accounts were lost. You know, a lot of people lost their childhood accounts because hackers took them or banned them. It was pretty disheartening to see at the time. Then for the next 4 years on the game, from 2021 to 2024, the game hit a really weird time period, I would say. In 2021, the game really had a lot of controversies within the community. I kind of tried to stay away from the community side of things in this video because it's more focused on how the game has evolved and the history of the game, so to speak, for this video specifically. But even outside of community side controversies and issues, the game faced another pretty big hack in August of 2021, which Animal Jam didn't even see coming. They allowed anybody's account to be hacked. That's something noticeable. Also, at the start of 2021, Flash was officially kind of removed and shut down from every mainstream browser, meaning Animal Jam couldn't be run on browser anymore because Animal Jam utilizes Flash as a main game engine. So anybody playing the game had to move over to the desktop app, which obviously caused a lot of people to quit, either because they weren't able to get the desktop app or they just couldn't run the app that great because it's not optimized the best. I think in the following year of 2022, when Animal Jam was acquired by another company entirely, a lot of people started to see more and more microtransactions being added to Animal Jam Mobile, which a lot of people started to express their concern and worrisome for that game as well. And don't get me wrong, I think microtransactions are just kind of a given in games like Animal Jam. You know, it's a free-to-play game. Of course, they're going to have some kind of subscription and microtransactions. You know, it's the only way they're going to make money type of thing. But given like all of the gambling and gotcha mechanics in that game that's been added over those years, I think it's kind of fair, I guess, especially with being a kid's game and all. But 2023 and 2024, I think, were the two most stale years, I would say, in the history of the game. A lot of the updates, they just felt like the same old type of thing where they would return cool stuff, don't get me wrong, and they would recolor items in really cool colorways, return items that were never released before because they made them when they were still releasing updates but just never got around to releasing them. So technically they were new, but a lot of people felt like they were kind of the same old, still stale content. They started doing reskinned dens. I thought that was an interesting approach to it. I actually find that to be pretty cool. And don't get me wrong, if you're asking my personal opinion, I think these things are still kind of cool. Even with when Animal Jam said they were going to slow down content, the fact that we're still doing these things, I think, is really good of them. But it wasn't until this year where Animal Jam kind of took a different approach. They actually started updating Animal Jam Classic a lot more with a lot more content. Even though there was a lot of recycled stuff still, and even in the most recent update, there's still recycled stuff. It's still stuff that people are enjoying. You know, it's a lot of content to digest there when they don't really have to be doing it anymore. And even earlier this year, Animal Jam Classic got its first new pet in the game in 6 years, which I think was a pretty big thing. Gave a lot of people hope and rejuvenated a lot of people's hopes in the game. And not only that, the first promo for the game was released in 6 years also, with a Sugar Glider plushie being made in collaboration with Makeship. I think it fueled a lot of optimism with people in terms of, you know, maybe someday Animal Jam Classic getting another update with actual new content maybe. And while it was promised years ago that Animal Jam Classic would have a recode of some sort because the game on its current infrastructure and technology is getting outdated day by day and more hard to update day by day, it's still really fascinating to see that Animal Jam is still running and you can just open it up and play anytime you want. Well, except when this error message isn't showing up. Other than that, then yeah, you can still play. And I think that's where a lot of people forget, myself included. This is a Flash game from 2010. It is now 15 years later, still running on Flash and still being updated. And while the mobile game is overshadowing it and their main focus now for Animal Jam HQ, both games still being updated, still being engaged with. It's really cool to see. And that's the thing, the more engagement they see with both games, the more they're going to update them. So that's all I can really recommend for anybody watching that wants to see Animal Jam keep going another 15 years. Keep engaging, keep playing, and who knows, maybe in another 15 years time, you'll see another video from me talking about 30 years on Animal Jam. I kind of hope not though. It'd be kind of embarrassing if I was like 50 years old still making Animal Jam videos, but yeah, who knows, time will tell. I think that's going to do it for this video. Happy birthday, Animal Jam, and here's to the future.